Fans of the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40,000, thank you very much for joining me for today's 8th edition Warhammer 40,000 Newsflash, and the date today is the 2nd of May 2017. So this is going to be a quickie, just like the phase that we're going to be talking about, which is the charge phase. And the latest post has gone up on the Warhammer community website describing what this particular phase, which is normally what precedes much death and splatting, will look like in the 8th edition. I will leave a link in the description to the article. Please check it out. After yesterday's shambolic mess of graphics, I've gone a little bit simpler. I've got a couple of new things in here, so I managed to afford a highlighter. So I've got this nice little Stabilio Boss marker in Dayglow Orange, and I used its nice little chisel tip to do this along with my Sharpie. So, you know, simple but effective, and I've got little coloured dots, and also, you know, and I pushed a boat out for this one. I've drawn as an ultramarine badge for this last point, and we'll come to that later. So hopefully that's a little bit of a recovery from yesterday's slightly iffy effort. What does the post tell us today about the charge phase? The key message here is the basic mechanics remain unchanged. So it's almost as you were. Almost. There are a couple of changes. So the first thing is, and this is quite a significant one, to be locked in melee, you no longer have to be in base-to-base contact. Models are now considered to have a 1-inch melee combat range. However, this isn't some sort of laissez-faire style system, which you may be familiar with if you ever played the Lord of the Rings tabletop battle game, which is a very sort of open skirmish style game. Unit rules do still apply. So although you only have to get within an inch, it also means you can't get within an inch of a model from a unit that you're not actually engaging in close combat or melee. Yeah, a little bit different, and it kind of, you don't have to be quite so close. It also means that with our normal 2d6 charge movement, so you do, you know, with a 2d6 charge movement, you now actually in effect have a 13-inch charge range, because you only have to get within 1 inch of an opponent, and getting within 1 inch of an opponent counts as a successful charge. Now, we don't yet know anything about how the piling rule may work in this or anything like that, and that is going to come in tomorrow's post, so they tell us, which will be about the fight phase, and that's when the actual dirty work gets done. Okay, so that's the first change. That goes along as well with the pistol rule, whereby you have to shoot with pistols in melee, which is going to make things really, really deadly if you've got units armed with pistols, and particularly if you've got a pair of pistols. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath for whoever is on the receiving end. Second point, have you ever written a sentence where you started writing it and then you started writing it and then you realise you run out of space to finish it? So I had to sort of improvise here, and I put Overwatch can now be attempted an infinite number of times, which is almost true. Currently, in 7th edition, you're only allowed to make 1 Overwatch attack per assault phase. Now, a unit can now make any number of Overwatch attacks, as long as it doesn't get engaged in melee by charging opponents. So this is subtle, but quite significant. Previously, you could kind of metagame a bit, as I would call it. And let's say you had 2 units who were ready to, you wanted to charge at an enemy unit. So let me give you an example of what I mean by the metagame here. Imagine you're trying to attack an enemy squad. You've got 2 units, and both your units are only 5 inches away from the enemy. Your first unit is a squad of standard tactical marines. Your second unit is a squad of terminators. You're trying to attack an enemy unit. It doesn't matter if they're marines or guardsmen, but they're armed with melter guns. Now, the unit that's going to do all the damage here are the terminators. However, you really don't want to take an Overwatch shot off any of those melter guns, because there's a pretty high chance it's going to roast one of your expensive tactical dreadnoughts. So what the cunning player does is they declare the charge first with the marine squad, the tactical marines. That, because they're only at 5 inches, pretty much forces a defending player to open fire with the melter gunners for risk of losing their Overwatch fire. If the tactical marines are unlucky and they don't succeed in their charge, the attacking player has succeeded in expending the opponent's Overwatch fire, and you then simply charge your terminators in, and they walk in and then they dice up whoever's defending. In the new system, that would not happen. In the new system, you would fail your first charge, and then the second charge with your terminators, you would get shot at a second time by the defending melter gunners. Haha, Suck on that, metagamers. But no, that's a bit mean, but because of course, metagaming it, it's not, there's nothing unfair with that, it's just using the rules as they're written. I think they've decided to allow the multiple Overwatch shots to deal with people using, in effect, screening units to suck out Overwatch fire, whereas in reality, might you say, well, you know, the unit's actually more likely to fire at the more dangerous thing, and because you have to do one thing at a time, the way 40k works. I think this extra Overwatch, I think, is a good idea. Gives the defender some more options, makes the attacker plan their attacks more carefully as well. That's the other change, and probably the biggest change. That's it. That's all there is on the charge phase. I told you this was going to be a quickie. Right, and finally, so there is another post that went up on the Warhammer community website with a little trailer for, shall we say, it's a bit of a fluff trailer, perhaps, for 8th edition. And basically, in this trailer, I won't give it all away, and you've probably seen it already, but, you know, let's talk about it. Our favourite Ultramarine, Guilliman, whatever we want to call him, and Belsarius Crawl, they're having a bit of a chatette, it seems. And Guilliman is kind of doing a bit of a voiceover and essentially admonishing the Empire for what it has achieved over the last 10 millennia while he's been having his extended snooze. And he kind of like gives them A+ for effort, but C- for attainment. And then it goes on to talk about a new weapon. And we're treated to this image of lots of humanoid figures in some sort of growth tanks, and these seem to be what we, from various rumours and a few photos and someone's eagle-eyed spotting, seem to be this idea that in the new starter set we are going to get some supersized Marines, which is Reboot Guilliman's answer to getting the Imperium's predicament resolved and kicking some alien butt in what is going to be the Indomitus Crusade. So this really leads to the question, well, what are these Supermarines going to be called? And, you know, a couple of ideas popped into my mind, and these are slightly tongue-in-cheek and just a little bit naughty, shall we say, because people have made comparisons with Age of Sigmar, and I couldn't help but think of Stormcast Eternals. So then, of course, I thought of Storm Smurfs or Ultracast Eternals. You know, they just popped into my mind. I couldn't help myself. If you've got any ideas for what the new Supermarine could be called, serious or silly or otherwise, please leave them in the comments section. I'll be back tomorrow with another update talking about the fight phase. Thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.